right. I think we'll go ahead and get started. I think a few housekeeping items for everyone, and I know a few people have already found it, but we will be monitoring the chat and QA function throughout today's session, and we're appreciative of everyone who was able to jump on here today. So. What we have on the agenda first and foremost is we'll start with some introductions, so you know who's going to be moderating today's sessions, and then we'll get right into the meat of the presentation. So, Michael, I'll have you get us kicked off here, and then we'll take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, John, and thanks everyone for joining us today. My name is Michael McClure. I am the automation practice lead here at eCapital Advisors. Been in eCapital coming up on 2 years now, and I originally started my career at Anheuser-Busch implementing RPA. Really fell in love with the technology and the development process and wanted to do it full time. So really been helping eCapital support our clients and their automation initiatives for the past couple of years now. So excited to talk about that today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Michael. And John Kurth here with eCapital. I lead our automation practice from a sales perspective. So partner very closely with Michael and the rest of the eCapital team to ensure that our clients' automation objectives are met and ultimately exceeded. So really looking forward to today's session, and we do want it to be interactive again. So any comments, questions that anyone has, please feel free to leverage that chat and QA feature within the webinar here today. So what we have on the docket is first looking at, why should organizations be automating, what it is, and what are some specific supply chain automation use cases as well. So one of the first questions that we always like to ask organizations and teams of people is this one here. If there was a way for us to remove the least favorite part of your day or your team's day and replace it with the most favorite part, would you jump at that opportunity, or would you want that for your team? And I'm pretty sure our record going right now is that no one has said no to this question. When you really start kind of thinking about human nature and what we enjoy, outside of work, we want to do the things that we find fulfilling and enjoying, and we tend to procrastinate or push off the things that we don't, those difficult conversations maybe as well. And so what we really preach as the goal of automation across the board is for organizations and for automation to take away those mundane things and the things that we procrastinate on, to really empower our employees and allow our employees and team members to focus and do the things that they really enjoy and that makes an impact and is fulfilling to them and ultimately to the business as well. So when we start kind of taking a step back and thinking about just all the different things we have to do day in, day out as employees, regardless of role, whether we're in, supply chain or planning, inventory, there's a lot of different things and directions that we get pulled into, a lot of which you can be seen here. And this is not to say that automation is going to become this iRobot scene or movie where our jobs and careers are taken over by technology. That's absolutely not the case. But where we can really see technology and automation coming in, it is a good visual or analogy maybe is when you think of like Siri or Alexa on your phone, or Hey Google even, is being able to complement and interact with technology to make us more efficient. That's really where we see automation, playing a key role and really empowering the employees and our team's time, specific within supply chain. So let's start kind of looking at some specific examples or trends maybe we've seen over the last couple of years specifically. And we don't want to spend too much time on this, but I think it really kind of encapsulates where automation can play an integral and key part in our lives in terms of helping create a more resilient supply chain. Obviously, COVID threw everyone into a whirlwind, and we're coming out the other side. But that's really kind of created this focus on how can we ensure that our supply chain and our business overall is very agile and scalable based on changing market dynamics and economies, truthfully, with what we're seeing today. And another analogy that we preach, a lot on our roundtables is becoming more proactive versus having to react and having those Schneike's moments where we're really trying to, put out the fire, or we just come across something and that becomes the top priority that we have to jump through. As if we're driving that car down the highway, let's make sure that we're looking out in front through our windshield versus kind of historically looking in the rearview mirror to see, where we've been, type of a visual. And I would say, just kind of further expanding upon this as well, some of the main pain points that we hear from a lot of organizations that we engage with is, the rate of business and the rate of change is drastically increasing. We don't have the systems or access to the data and information that we need to be able to navigate all of these changing dynamics in real time or near real time. So how can we solve for some of these main and common challenges? That's really where we see robotic process automation, or RPA, coming into the fold, and organizations really investigating and considering not only for the impacts to supply chain itself or operations itself, but really across the entire business and enterprise as well. So let's start to maybe look at or define, okay, what is RPA? And RPA is a software solution that integrates into our business environment and simulates employee actions. So you can see on the screen some very common use cases or elementary foundational things that we as employees do each and every day that RPA can really help us solve for and provide efficiencies and impact. So now that we start to think about that, what we really say is, as long as the process can be mapped, it can be automated. So think of it as if we were coming into an organization, or you're training a new employee, and we want to look at the inventory control process and look to automate that. Show us and train us exactly as you would that new employee of, hey, every Monday we log into this system at 8:05. Here's the credentials that we use. We navigate to this panel, check these fields, escalation points we send to Bob, everything else that we clear through, we push forward to Michael, and then we move on to the next thing. As long as we understand what that standard operating procedure is, we can leverage technology to streamline and do that automatically for us. And then where there's challenges or things that we need to address, we as employees can come in and troubleshoot. So instead of spending an hour long on the process, maybe it's only 10 minutes and just looking at a handful of issues or challenges. So I know this is pretty broad. So let's take a look at, a little bit deeper, some specific use cases within supply chain itself. And of course, this is not all encompassing, and we're not going to have time to go through each and every one of these use cases today. But a lot of these listed here are great places to start and be thinking about, because going back to one of those early chart visuals in the bottom right quadrant there that we were looking at for daily tasks, is we want to identify processes or bottlenecks within the business, within supply chain, that are high frequency, meaning we're doing them repetitive day in, day out, and that are going to have a massive impact to the business, or they're very high error prone, which results in loss of profits, revenue, whatever the case may be. So that's really where opportunities exist for automation to play a very key part. And before we get to maybe some specific customer use cases that Michael and the rest of the team have engaged with and done, we kind of want to showcase, at least at a very high level, the art of the possible on and at a high level, three different supply chain management type use cases. So the first is going to be demand planning here. You can see it at the top. And historically, we have an individual that day in, day out is having to navigate and manage the top blue process here. Well, anytime you see gears listed next to review inventory or any other areas, that's where automation and RPA can really come in and streamline and take away those tactical, manual, tedious steps that we're doing, and instead just have the human interaction come in with having to review, the production plan and determine what changes need to be made with the assistance of technology. And on average, we usually see that 80-20 rule within demand planning, where 80% of the process or part of the process can be automated with the help of RPA. And still that human can have the 20% that's going to be the most challenging, or where decisions have to be made, or we have to communicate to other stakeholders based on the changes really, across the board.
John, if I can jump in here. So to give a little bit of background about myself too, right? And why I'm really passionate about supply chain, specifically in terms of automation, is, as I think I mentioned before, I started my career at Anheuser-Busch and specifically spent a year in the corporate office working on automations and data analytics, and then actually spent a year as the group manager at the warehouse at the LA brewery. So a lot of these use cases that I'm going to be talking about here in the next couple of minutes in the demo are things that we did at Anheuser-Busch and things that we've continued to see kind of a routine across other customers, right? So when we take a look at this demand planning, any organization producing something is generally doing demand planning, right? And when it comes to the supply chain, my rule is there's really two things that we need. We need a good plan, which in itself can be challenging to do. And the second thing that we need to do is execute on that plan. Anyone that works in supply chain, especially in the past couple of years, know that executing on the plan is extremely challenging, right? So what we try to do is automate a lot of this process, right? So every day, right? Or maybe it's a nightly process. Let's have a bot go out and review the current sales and the current forecast. Have there been any changes made during that day? Let's compare that against the inventory. Let's run let's run some business rules and understand where our risks are at, and see what adjustments need to be made. So we have the forecast. We can review the production plan. Can we integrate your business rules to actually form a solution there? So a lot of times we start off kind of with this blue part. Let's have the bot go out, identify risk, and give recommendations. And then ultimately over time, have an automation handle that entire process. We recognize that we just got an order for, I'm going to say Bud Light because that's what I worked in. We got an order for 100 pallets of Bud Light and we don't have it on the production schedule. At what brewery can we find time in order to increase production 13 weeks out in order to make this order? Let's have the bot automatically detect that need and then make the change itself in the production schedule. So that's really what we're looking at, right? Humans and bots working together in order to make this process faster, because the better you can react to changes in the plan, the more efficient you'll be. Being able to pivot when problems happen is what makes a supply chain successful. So being able to automate a lot of those tasks when problems do occur make you way more reactive. And then that 20% that really needs that human mind to analyze and maybe make a phone call, reach out to vendors and understand what the problem is, streamline that experience. Have your employees focusing on that 20% that really matter, while the 80% that is more standardized, more mundane, we can do automatically. So that's kind of the philosophy here, right? And why I really like supply chain is because these processes are happening 24/7. when we're talking about all of these, they're happening constantly, right? When we're looking at maybe finance or reporting, maybe it's once a week we're doing cash reconciliation. Maybe it's once a day we're doing a reporting. But supply chain, right? It's operations. It's happening all day, 24/7, as long as you're running. So there's a lot of value here. So I know that was a lot, but I do kind of wanted to jump in here and give my perspective on it because I really like working on these projects and it lets me use a bit of my background in warehouse experience. So a lot of the cases I'll go through today, I'll probably have that brewery talk in there. So another one that we have here is like supplier inventory, right? So as we go and manage that production schedule, right? Maybe we have a bot that's checking the forecast and managing production. Do we have everything we need to actually produce that, right? So you can see how you start to build out an automation center of excellence around supply chain. We're handling forecasting and we're handling production. Now let's handle making sure we actually have supplies to do that production run. And if we don't, then can we go out and automatically order new ones? Or can we adjust the schedule so that we are going to have those parts on time? So go through this process, right? Supplier inventory. This top part is really identifying, right? We train a bot based on your business rules to identify when there's potential gaps or risk when it comes to having the necessary raw materials, supplies, equipment, and send a notification. Generate a report of that so your employees can action it. Take it a step further. Can the bot go out and order that part itself, right? We identified that we're going to be short on this for our manufacturing run. Let's go out, have the bot log into that system and actually create a PO for that to come across. Great way to make sure that you're not going to do a production run and then you're missing material, right? So huge downstream costs. You're not only saving time by saying we don't have an employee having to manage this, but also if you can more reliably make sure you have material on hand for your schedule, cost savings there can unlimited, right? So really, it's just another way we can take this. We identify a problem, let's have the bot go out and solve it and follow your business routines. So this, again, supplier inventory, missing material, identify, go out and reorder it. That's really this summed up. And then there's one more, right? And that's around the delivery. So working at the warehouse, it's nothing is more frustrating that when you have an order sitting at your door, you need to load it, and you don't have any of the products that's supposed to be on that shipment because production changed. Wouldn't it be great for a way to track maybe through EDI of where your shipments are, inbound and outbound, right? If we're expecting material, where is that currently located? Can we send a notification when it's about to arrive? Trying to make the process smoother so that we're not having maybe people waiting for dock doors to be open for unloading. Things like that slow your operation down, and you end up paying detention, right? As you have trucks sitting out there waiting to be unloaded. Want to avoid paying detention? Can we identify where things currently are and shift the schedule if needed? Maybe we updated the production run because we were missing a part, something broke down, whatever it may be, we updated production. We still have a shipment scheduled for that production run. Identify that and push it out, right? That way we're not having these cases where we're missing material on hand. That's really the idea here. So we're managing forecasting in the schedule. We're managing in what we need to order. And then finally, we're managing where it is what we ordered is currently located. Sorry, I said that poorly. Then we're looking at what we ordered, where that currently is, and if we have a problem there and need to shift anything on the schedule. So you can see again how you can start to build this center of excellence around supply chain. Start at the top, forecasting, and work your way all the way down to delivery, on-time delivery, right? And that is how you can take an organization that's heavily manual to that 80% automation and see a lot of efficiencies. So I went through that quick, John. I'll take a drink of water after all that talking and let you run through this one.
No, absolutely. That was great context, Michael. Thank you so much for that personal experience as well. So obviously, with our time constraints here today, cannot go super deep, but the next thing that we'll leave you with here before we start getting into, some real customer stories and then kind of showcase a live walkthrough as well of, what does this technology look like operating? is we call these kind of the fast start areas. These are areas within various departments that we see automation really being the low-hanging fruit, if you will, where it can really create an impact and return on investment very, very quickly, within just a few short months. So definitely just kind of wanted to highlight some of these areas that could be an area to consider or look at internally within your organization. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Michael to kind of walk through quickly just some customer use cases and experiences that the team has seen.
Yeah, definitely. So this is really how I got into RPA, my experience at Anheuser-Busch. Not something that eCapital worked on, but it's really my story. But I think it's a great implementation. I love talking about this. So at Anheuser-Busch, we had a team of people just managing the forecast. And really what that was taking our forecast data and entering it into Salesforce. The problem is that we were forecasting at a wholesaler level by SKU 13 weeks out. So you can think hundreds of wholesalers times hundreds of SKUs times 13. You have a team of 15 people that all they do all day is moving data between systems. Not really what we want to be paying people to be doing. And the systems just didn't talk to each other. How did we solve that? We were able to create an automation that overnight took a look at our forecasting model, extracted data from that, and then tied that back to our Salesforce data entry system where forecasting was actually done, and just moved that data over exactly how a human would, with keystrokes going through each SKU, each wholesaler, week by week. So that it was a massive project to do, but if you look at the service level increase of 18%, that's the justification, right? Not only did we save a bunch of time, but we're providing better service, right? Because we're more accurately forecasting, we're able to make sure material is on hand. We're preventing out of stocks. That has a downstream cost that's a little bit more difficult to calculate, but is much greater than just we save people's time of entering data, right? It's customer experience. It's making sure your product is on the shelf so that competitors can't get there. Those are the differences that we really see in supply chain, why it's so exciting, I think, to automate here, because we really impact the end customer experience. So just by automating that task and being able to have that group of 15 focus on actually intelligently analyzing the forecast rather than just typing out numbers, we saw an increase in forecast accuracy, increase in service level, and supply chain overhead. And this was just where we started too. That's one case of Anheuser-Busch. There was hundreds of bots. I actually think it was not hundreds. I think it was over 30 bots were running overnight every day at Anheuser-Busch when I left. So definitely more and more use cases out there, all really focused on supply chain. This next one, I love this story because it talks about a pain point that I think everyone has, and that's a backlog. So CDI is an oil and gas manufacturing company, and they identified they had a growth issue. They were either going to need to hire additional resources or find a different solution. Based on an evaluation there, they decided to say, instead of hiring, let's go down an automation path. And the automation they set out to do was really around taking their sales orders in their ERP system and actually generating and scheduling the work to be done on the manufacturing floor, right? So we have all our sales orders. We need to take those and actually schedule work to be done based on their planning, fence, and business rules. This was a huge problem for them at the time. When we rolled out this bot, they had a backlog of hundreds of sales orders that needed to be turned into actual scheduled work. We rolled out this bot, and within 24 hours, one day, we took that backlog from hundreds to zero. And that's where it stays every day, right? Because they don't have to constantly be going back and checking in sales orders. Their team is able to just focus on the schedule rather than having to enter everything as they come across, right? So really, this bot has allowed them to focus on what they want to be doing, being out on the shop floor and actually checking on the manufacturing schedule, having conversations about why isn't material showing up on time, following up with suppliers, right? These are the valuable items we want them to be doing, not taking 100 work orders or 100 sales orders and generating a work order, doing the same thing over and over and over again. have a bot do that, have them focus on what they need to focus on. And I love this. They had that massive backlog. I've had the manager come back to me and say, you've created a problem for me. I don't have enough work for my guys to do anymore. Which is great to hear, right? That's exactly what we want to do, is free up their time. So it's a good problem to have, right? And then the last one I wanted to talk on is another manufacturing case with Transcendia. So Transcendia is another manufacturing organization, and they really had a problem around their master data. They had an employee that had tens of thousands of master data items that he was assigned to update. And the only way that that business could do it was by going into their ERP, line by line, typing out that update. And you can imagine that when you type out 20,000 lines, you also tend to make a mistake. And this master data was actually on the bill of materials. And if you accidentally make price 10 instead of 1, you're definitely going to see a pretty big impact downstream. So we were able to take the task that he was doing, automate that so that he generates an Excel sheet with all the updates that he needs to make, and then he hits one button to execute that. Because of this, he no longer has to sit there typing out all these one by one, banging his head against his keyboard, and he's able to update over 10 times as many records every month as he was before. So again, I think automation can sometimes be scary. I'm going to lose my job, but no, that employee was incredibly valuable. We just made him more valuable. He's able to do 10 times the amount of work that he was before. That's a great story, right? And that's what we want to do, right? The theme here being turn your employees to the best version of themselves. Have them focus on things that really matter, that take the human brain and thought, not just keystrokes back and forth. So another exciting use case on the manufacturing side, all around just master data, cleansing, and upkeep.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much, Michael, for sharing those. And I'm going to actually turn the reins over to you to get into a demo kind of use case and show off one of the technology options that's available here today. And while Michael kind of gets set up on his side, just some anecdotal and additional context, as well, is with Transcendia and CDI for sure. These implementations, took weeks, not months or years that many organizations may face or other systems. So the return on these, solutions is very quick. So like in Transcendia's use case, I believe as well, just with a few initial automations around this BOM updating, there was, easily north of $250,000 that directly impacted EBITDA and the bottom line. So, and I know the investment was way less for them as well. So just a ton of great savings and return there. So Michael, I'll turn it back over to you now.
Cool. Yeah, no, appreciate that call out. I know CDI, I think they saw positive return on investment after 3 months of having it rolled out. So pretty quick there, realized value. Okay, so I get to do the exciting part and actually show off an RPA tool here. So I'm going to be showing off Automation Anywhere, and I'm going to log into our cloud environment here and show off, give you an idea of what it looks like to actually create an automation. What's it like to do RPA? Because at the end of the day, we want organizations to be able to do this on their own, right? I'm not going to pretend that paying a consultant is the most efficient way to get these rolled out, right? We want to build your team's knowledge so that they can do it themselves. And here I'll try to give you an idea of what it looks like to interact with one of these tools. I will say a lot of times I see demos in these presentations where people just pull up a video and you see it click around. I think those are a little bit meaningless. You can't tell the difference between a bot doing it and a human doing it, and you don't really know what's going on. So what we're going to do today is actually build out a couple simple automations and show you how you could add value to your organization in 5 minutes and save hours of time. So that's a pretty high goal, but let's see if we can do it. So I'm going to hop into our automation tab here. And this environment is where all the actual development, management, user setup, everything happens in here, which is really convenient. I'll come into this and I'm going to come into demo assets and hop into this folder. And I'm going to create a new bot and I'm going to call this test macro Excel. Go ahead and create and edit that. And we can see we have a nice view here. So this is how we actually program and create an automation. You can see over here on the left, we have this action bar that has a bunch of familiar words, right? You have clipboard, which is your copy and pasting. You have CSV and text files, right? We have date times, we have databases, a lot of familiar things over here. And this is what we'll be interacting with, right? These are pre-built out functions that we can kind of just drag and drop in order to complete a task. So the setup for this one, what we're going to do here is we're going to take an Excel file, we're going to open it up, we're going to run a macro, we're going to save it, and then email it off. Why am I talking about this? I've done supply chain cases for a lot of organizations, and I tend to find that in operations especially, we have a lot of Excel worksheets out there that are connected to our ERP via a SQL query. And boy, can those take a long time to run, 20 to 30, 40 minutes. I've seen these sheets run. They're pulling analytical data for people to actually perform work during the day. Big task I see is say, hey, can you automate all our Excel reports so that when we show up to work in the morning, they're refreshed and sitting there and we don't have to open them and spend 20 minutes waiting for them to refresh? Totally. What does that look like? So I'm going to drag in the step here just for organization, and I will call it Open Excel. Next thing, I'm going to search what I want to do. So in this case, I want to interact with Excel. I'll search that, and I immediately have all these functions here to interact with Excel. Way too much to go through right now, but the one that we need to start is just going to be open up that Excel file. And now I'm just going to point it to the Excel file that I want to open. So I'll just navigate through here. And the file that will open is just going to be called run by macro, this Excel sheet. And you can see I just use the normal browser and it automatically pulls it in here. So cool, we'll open this up. We don't have anything too unique here, but we will say that there's a header. And let's take a look at this actual file and see what it is. So this is pretty basic. You can think that this might be inventory data that you pulled from a SQL query. It just has bin locations, age, expiration date on it, and some other data. What we want to do is just run this macro that we have here called sort. And this one's going to run really quickly. I'm not going to make you sit here for 20 minutes for a real refresh. It'll run almost instantly, but you'll see it change and be updated, right? This could be your refresh. This could be a macro of your choice, or you could create a macro out of these functions here. But in this case, we have an existing macro we want to run. So I'm going to search macro, have one function, run macro, drag and drop it over. Its name is sort. So I'm going to say to run sort. And that's it. That's all we have to do to automate that task. Only last thing we need to do is just close it. So 3 lines of code and we can start automating things for your organization, right? Open Excel, run the sort macro, and then close it. That's great. But almost always for these bots, we want to distribute this data to stakeholders. So to finish it up, let's drag in a new step, call it email, and then search email. So immediately, even if I'm new to this, right, I can search email, kind of look through here and see, I see this one that says send. That's what I want to do. So let's see what it looks like. To address, I'll send it to myself. And if we wanted to do an attachment, we could. So let's go ahead and grab that file there. Tell it we want to attach the file that we just refreshed and saved. Raise an error if it's not there, and then we'll send that through Outlook. And there we go. That is really, please check file. If I add a message, that's all we need to do. So you can see that that took me 5 minutes. I have clients that have 10 to 15 of these sheets that we automate and run. And in, again, a couple hours, we can automate that entire task and start adding value. just one really quick way that you can purchase the software and immediately start to see some ROI, and also a pretty simple place to get started, nothing too risky or complex here. So I'll go ahead and just hit run on this, and we'll see that this just starts to execute. And my hands are up, I'm not doing this, but you'll see exactly kind of what you expect. See an Excel file pop open, we'll have it get sorted as it ran the macro, and there you go, it's done. So you can imagine if that took 20 minutes to run, it would sit here for 20 minutes. But in this case, I chose a real short one. And then if we check back to my email, we can see I received an email here a couple minutes ago, and it has our file that we sent, except it looks different now, right? It's sorted by days remaining on age as opposed to its bin number. So real basic, but again, I always think it's more useful to show you what it looks like to actually interact and create some of these things than just show you a video at the end of it doing things. These run so quick that sometimes you can't even really see what it's doing too, right? So part of the reason I show off this Excel is this is what I consider bread and butter of automation. Almost any process will be interacting with Excel in some extent, putting data there, running formulas, grabbing data, updating something. So really, if you're able to master this, and if you only know how to automate in Excel, you still have a lot that you can do there. Cool. So that's specifically Excel. But part of what John was talking about earlier was this simulate human actions. And what's cool about RPA is that it's agnostic to technology. For instance, just how your employee can go to Salesforce and click around in Salesforce, they're able to log into CNN.com and click around in the news, or Yahoo.com and click around there, right? RPA is kind of the same way. It is able to just click around. It's not something where I need a blueprint so I can connect this to SAP. Oh, I need to purchase this additional license so I can have this connector. No, it just works with front-end interfaces. So I'll go ahead and delete this. And I'm going to actually pull up a web page. My favorite one to use is yahoo.com because it's so busy and has a bunch of just junk on it. So what I'll do is create a new automation that's going to be automating in a web browser. So I'll call this step open Yahoo. And then I'll search browser because that's what I want to automate. We have our keyword open here. I will say to open it in Chrome in a new window, and we will go to yahoo.com. And I'll close this and just run it real quick, make sure everything's good. As expected, we should just see a web page with Yahoo come up, and then we'll actually automate something here. So we see that popped up. Awesome. What we want to do now is actually record actions on it. So again, this is the simulate human actions. Again, I'm using a Yahoo web page. This could be Salesforce. This could be a desktop application like your ERP. It could be SAP. It could be CNN. Again, it doesn't matter. That's the whole beauty of RPA and why it's robust. It doesn't matter what web page you're trying to interact with. You don't have to create some type of new code or anything. It's the same function. So I'm going to hit this start recording. And over here on the right, we're going to see this window. Sorry, it's a bit small. Come up and ask me what window I want to record in. So I'm going to say Yahoo, and then I'm going to say universal record. And then you can see now that I've started recording, as I move my mouse over the page, we're starting to get this red highlighting around elements on the page. Again, this is why I choose Yahoo. It is very busy. There is a lot on here, but you can see it's able to pretty accurately identify. Say you wanted to grab the 5th item of trending now every day, right? You could do that. It's able to identify that right there. Grab the first news article you could. But what I'm going to do is do a search. So maybe I want to see what Apple stock is doing. So I'll click in here, search Apple stock, and then hit enter. Now that I've done that, I'm going to hit finish down there. And what we'll see is that we automatically generated a line of code that replicated my action. Again, simulate human actions. I did this, we recorded it. Now we have a line of code that'll do the exact same thing. So you can see we have a screenshot of what it's interacting with. It's going to set the text of this to Apple stock and then hit enter. So let's go ahead and run this and see what we get. So we should see Yahoo open up, and then we should set that text box and hit enter. Again, could be any page. This could have been a Google search box. This could have been a Salesforce search box. Doesn't matter. It'll go ahead and do that for us. So the reason I like to go through these two lessons is I think if you just know these two things, you're able to do so much. If you're able to record and capture the actions you take and also interact with Excel, 50% of use cases you'll be able to do with just that. So that's why I kind of like to go through this and build it up. What does it look like to actually build one of these bots? It's a combination of those functions, right? We open Excel, we grab a piece of data, then we're going to go open your ERP system and we're going to search that piece of data. Maybe that's a transaction ID. Maybe that's a shipment ID, right? Maybe that's an EDI number. Whatever that is, we'll take that and search it in whatever system there is. And you can see how you can start to string these together to get something really complicated, right? If we go back to the actual interface, there are a bunch of functions down here. We've touched, 2 of the hundreds that are available. And there's even additional thousands out there. So it's a bit overwhelming to get started, but you have a lot of pre-built power out here that allows you to just drag and drop. For instance, let's say we wanted to move a file around, just file management, search file, and we can just say, create a file somewhere, right? Really simple stuff to get started. Maybe we wanted to say, if something happens, do something, right? If anyone has some coding concepts out there, then we could say, if date time, right? Maybe we say, if it is past 4 o'clock, do something, right? Start to build in your business rules. Even take it a step further, try catch, right? Try to do something. If we're not able to do that, do something else. Maybe that's try to open something. If you're not able to open it, send an email alert that says there's a problem. So through these concepts, we drag and drop more and we really start to build out something robust. But again, it's that combination of things like Excel automation with that clicking around to create something. And again, super easy to just say record, capture, point it to your window, and then you can just keep clicking and it'll keep generating more code for you. So I know that's a lot. Like I said, I like to go through these just because I think this is a little bit more interesting and valuable than just showing a video of something clicking around. Everyone here has probably seen something like inventory management. Showing you another video of it clicking around is probably not going to resonate as much as what it's like to actually use the tool. So that's really the two demos I wanted to get through. Like I said, lay some of the foundation. If there's any questions, feel free to throw them in chat and I can do my best to address them here on the fly. But John, I can, I think, kick it back to you at this point to kind of go through the end of the PowerPoint.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Thanks so much, Michael. I think that was absolutely, fantastic and some great use cases there. So do you see the screen okay now, Michael?
Looks good to me.
Awesome. So to Michael's point, getting started, where we really want to see organizations start is in the upper left best zone there. And that's really where we want to make sure and work with you to make sure that you're stepping off on the right foot. And then as you continue on your automation journey is start to enable the team. So you can start to have, specific team members building your own automations within Excel or various systems that you're logging into, et cetera. And then to Michael's point, leveraging IT or outside consultants for the upper right, advanced users, more technical in nature, and staying away from the no-go zone, as we call it, where there's just not enough value to the business to look at that automation. And we really do see a journey that organizations go through, as we've been mentioning several different times, is first executing on those quick wins, then setting up further education. So if you were to get started within supply chain or your operational area, starting there, executing on those quick wins. Then once we have those quick wins and a handful of them that we can show ROI and results to, bringing that to IT and the cross-functional business areas to say, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's some of the results that we've seen. Let's start standing up an IT, governance model, or making sure that we're following the appropriate security protocols, and start to evangelize this across the entire organization to really scale. So then all areas of the business are working together. I mean, we've seen countless times where you have supply chain or planning, working with the finance team. It is, if there's a way to better streamline and have those teams work together, automation is absolutely an engine to help achieve that. So I know we have a few minutes left for what we had allotted, but definitely hope that you all enjoyed today's session. We do have several other upcoming events and meetups that can be found on our website, both virtual and in person. But definitely, again, appreciate you all joining us here, and Michael and I will stay on for a few minutes in case any questions come through, but feel free to use that chat and QA feature.